October 1942, Central Stalingrad. A German NCO signals his squad to cross the street. Intelligence promised the block was secure. Yesterday's assault wiped out Soviet defenders. One rifle crack echoes. The NCO falls. His men stop cold. A runner sprints forward anyway, dispatch case bouncing. Another crack. The case hits frozen ground. Silence. 3 Soviet soldiers caused this. 1 sniper in the rubble, 1 spotter counting heartbeats, 1 backup rifle trained from a different angle. No machine guns, no grenades. Just 2 aimed bullets that paralyzed 20 Wehrmacht soldiers. The Germans trained for volume, suppress, advance, conquer. But Vasily Zaitsev taught different math. Wait, breathe, make 1 bullet stop an entire squad. What the Germans don't know, crouched behind shattered brick, scanning empty windows, is that patience just became the deadliest weapon in Stalingrad. Within weeks, Zaitsev's method will turn the city into geometry. Every shadow a sniper, every movement a gamble, every order a potential death sentence. 2 shots. Warfare redefined. Vasily Zaitsev himself appears in this war like a photograph, slowly developing. He's slight, unremarkable at distance, dust caked on his hands, frost gathering in his eyebrows, utterly still behind his scope, breathing measured and deliberate. He carries a map, sketched in pencil on scrap paper, but it doesn't show streets or districts. It shows stairwells, drainage ducts, crawl spaces, ceiling joists, ways to move through the city when staying alive matters more than getting there fast. Before Zaitsev, Soviet doctrine was blunt. Charge forward, fire everything, overwhelm the enemy with bodies and bullets. Zaitsev teaches something different. Wait in perfect stillness, hide where they can't imagine, and hit them where it shatters their will to move. That shift, from volume to precision, from speed to patience, drives everything that follows. Back on that frozen street, a German corporal crouches low behind a mound of shattered brick and whispers, "Where?" Nobody answers. He knows the drill, the doctrine they hammered into him in training. Lay down suppressing fire, advance by bounds, keep momentum. But the men who stopped his squad cold didn't make noise, didn't reveal positions, didn't give him anything to suppress. They just raised their standard for when to pull the trigger. 2 options sit in front of him as the sky lightens. Push forward blind and send more men into a trap that swallows soldiers without a sound, or hold back and lose the minutes they need to launch the next assault 2 blocks over. No third shot comes. That silence isn't hesitation, it's strategy. Across the city, 3 two-man positions often work in tight coordination, what Zaitsev's teams call sixes, each pair with a shooter and a spotter, switching which angle they fire from so the Germans think there are a dozen rifles buried in the rubble. Sometimes just 2 shots total. That's enough. An entire platoon can freeze for minutes that stretch into an hour, then longer. On this block, below the street runs an old water pipe, cracked and abandoned years before the war. A team uses it to slip away after firing just once or twice, crawling through darkness and freezing water to emerge 3 buildings away. Before this morning, it was just plumbing. After sunrise, it's an escape route that makes them untouchable. By the time the sun fully clears the horizon, the street goes quiet. A flare hisses up somewhere off to the left, casting orange light that fades fast. Someone coughs behind cover, muffled and nervous. Snow starts falling as fine powder and ends as a thin coat settling over the dispatch case, still lying in the street where it fell. The Wehrmacht came into this block believing speed wins urban warfare. Hit hard, hit fast, crush resistance before it organizes. By the time the sun is up, speed means nothing. Patience and timing now own the street, and the rules of combat in Stalingrad have been rewritten by men who learned to wait. It's mid-October 1942, up in a neighborhood called Barricade, just north of downtown. There's this gutted workshop, no roof, just steel girders reaching up like ribs, and one wall still standing because the blast had already blown out the windows before it hit. The air's so cold, the frost just hangs there, the way dust used to. Zaitsev's standing with his back to some chalk marks on the wall. He's been awake so long he's forgotten what tired even feels like. Nikolai Kulikov's next to him. His hands don't shake, not even in this freezing cold. The way he watches things, it's like he's a surveyor looking at terrain. Angles first, then distances, then he listens to how everything sounds. Zaitsev draws 3 small squares on the wall. Hides. He adds a circle next to each one. Scout. Then arrows. But they don't go down the street. They go through pipes underneath and stairwells inside the buildings. You reach this stairwell without going outside, you live. You reach this pipe after 2 shots, the enemy won't know where the third one's coming from. And if you don't need a third shot, you won. He wipes the chalk away with his sleeve. Wait for the right target. He means a platoon sergeant, maybe a runner with a message bag, or a radioman, someone who actually makes things happen. Some private with a rifle can wait around all day. Patience isn't about doing nothing. It's the most aggressive thing you can do if you do it longer than the other guy can handle. Kulikov works with a young kid. Breathe and count it. Don't hold your breath. Just let it out. He positions the soldier against the bricks so the rifle stock lands in the same spot every time. They practice not shooting for 10 minutes before they practice shooting for 10 seconds. 3 hides set up right can cover one intersection so well that a whole squad can't figure out which door to be afraid of. 1 to 3 shots before you have to move. If the enemy hears 2 echoes, they can figure out where you are. The trainees come in pairs, 1 scout, 1 shooter. That pair becomes a team that can work on its own without waiting for orders from above. Maybe 10 or 12 pairs come through this ruin in a week. The thing they remember most is the quiet part. A long wait, then quick action, then another long wait. This one's name is Mikhail Sokolov. He's 20, from the south side of the city, and he's never been away from the river until now. He's got a civilian coat under his Red Army greatcoat because that's literally all he owns. When he first gets behind the scope, his hands shake. Kulikov doesn't tell him to stop. Let the shaking run its course. Then notice what doesn't shake, that moment right after you breathe out. They practice by picking targets from metal scraps scattered around the ruins like signs. Kulikov points to one. Runner. He touches another bent piece. Sergeant. A fragment with a hole in it gets a tap. Radio. Mikhail breathes and settles his crosshairs on the radio piece. He doesn't shoot. The sergeant next, still untouched. Finally, the runner. The crosshairs feel heavier there, but his finger stays still. For once in this city, he gets to decide when something happens. Late that same afternoon, a German countersniper sets up his scope in a broken window down the block. He's not careless. He's patient too. He's waiting for the training to become routine and the routine to become habit. His first shot doesn't hit anyone. It hits the chalk wall and erases one of Zaitsev's squares. Everyone jumps. Chalk dust floats down like snow. Kulikov says, "Class over." He doesn't run. He walks. He makes them all walk, single file, through the interior hallway, down to the pipe. The countersniper's waiting for them to panic and run, but it never happens. When 3 hides are connected by interior routes, the gun sound never stays in one place for long. If hide A fires first, hide B is supposed to move, because the countersniper's trying to triangulate based on the echo and muzzle flash, but he's guessing, not measuring. When B moves after A shoots, that breaks everything the countersniper expected and ruins his whole calculation. Meanwhile, the scout that hides C is looking for the giveaway, a glint of glass, or light shifting when someone's eye moves. Once they spot the countersniper's scope, the team rotates in a way that looks like panic, but is really just geometry. They move toward where the shot came from, but they're moving inside the building, so any return fire goes wide. October gets dark early. The room gets colder and louder because every sound echoes. Zaitsev takes Mikhail down into the pipe. It's slick, smells like rust and silt. A rat runs past. Outside, the machine guns are still going, but down here the story's simple. Crawl, stop, listen, crawl. They come up through a floor hatch across the street, 2 buildings down. Class picks up again in a new ruin like nothing even happened. By the end of the week, Mikhail, that 20-year-old from the south side, is watching a German probe from the 2nd floor of a bombed-out dormitory. He doesn't shoot the point man because he remembers the wall and the metal scraps and all those waiting drills. The platoon sergeant goes down mid-signal and the gap scares the rest of the squad off. Kulikov taps his boot, their signal to move. Mikhail doesn't want to leave. He wants to see what happens next, wants to prove something. But he decides against it. He slides back down into the hallway and into the pipe. 1 class a day if the routes are safe, maybe 2 if it stays quiet in the morning. 30, 40 trainees a month, if the city lets you live that long. Between the first shot and moving out, usually 1 to 2 minutes. 0. That's how many heroes Zaitsev wants here. The street doesn't need heroes. It needs people who can disappear without a trace. That German countersniper does everything right that night. His breathing's controlled. He's reading the room, watching for patterns. The pattern's there. What he doesn't know is that the pattern's a trap. He takes a second shot at a position the team left 15 minutes ago. It rings off brick. He curses himself, not them. He's good. He's just wrong. Late October, 1942. They're moving through a culvert that's basically the inside of a steel throat. Pitch black, with oil shimmering in thin streaks on the water below. Zaitsev goes first because he knows where this pipe bends, knows exactly which way to slide his boots so he doesn't bang his rifle against the walls. Kulikov's right on his heels, silently counting off the distance the whole way. Mikhail's third, doing the same count in his head. The 4th guy, a scout, seals the hatch behind them. Above, the street is pretending to be empty. They come out into a basement that reeks of damp wood and soup. Somewhere in the factory complex, a tank is running idle, that heavy mechanical breathing, in and out, in and out. The German sniper across the street is watching the window they just left. He'll think logically about it. The thing is, logic doesn't work in this city. Sound bounces around in weird ways here, and walls throw it back at you unpredictably. Kulikov taps Mikhail's sleeve 3 times, then holds up one finger to his lips and waits. He's waiting for the tank to breathe in deeper. When it does, a gunshot cracks out, but it rides right along with the engine noise, just a whisper buried inside a roar. A runner drops and his satchel spills open, bread scattering everywhere. The engine exhales just as Kulikov works the bolt. 1 shot. Then the team slips back into the pipe. That night, flares start popping over a courtyard they have to cross. They hiss like gas burners, washing everything in this slow, cold light. Zaitsev stands in the doorway and doesn't move. He's counting the flares burn in his head because timing is everything. At 12 seconds, the light gets thinner. 15, and there's a dip. 16 to 18, that's the window. That's when the world isn't looking. He moves. The courtyard's about 30 meters across. The team covers it in 3 quick bursts. Doorway to pillar, pillar to a busted crate, crate to the far door. Each move happens right as a flare dies. Another flare pops. They're already inside. The German sniper's been paying attention. He's cut down his exposure time, changed his window, moved positions between shots. He's watching a 2nd-story edge through dingy glass when he catches the tiniest shimmer in the air and fires. The round chips the pillar exactly where Zaitsev's shoulder was a second before. A brick shard catches Mikhail's cheek. Neither of them fires back. They just move. By early November, they've got a rhythm down. 2 shots, disappear. 1 shot if the echo sounds wrong. Sometimes no shots at all if the target isn't worth wasting time on. If the runner's escort suddenly looks up and you realize his rank is fake. They've learned when to hold back. Then one night, something changes. The German sniper stops playing their game. He holds his fire, waits for the engine, then shoots at a spot on the wall where a scope might have been. He's good enough that he could be one of them, just on the other side. But they don't beat him by being better. They beat him because they need less. He has to prove he's there to his own command. They only have to prove he isn't. The method isn't theory anymore. It's in their bones. The streets become a chessboard now, navigated by breathing and light and sound instead of bullets and orders. Their bodies know the steps. The enemy did the math right and still lost the minute. It's mid-November 1942, somewhere near Krasnoarmeyskaya Street. The ruins have turned the color of ash in the fading light. Anatoly Chekhov stands behind a jagged hole in a second-floor wall. A thin, quiet man, wrapped in a scarf pulled up to his eyes. He barely moves except to track his target through the scope. Vasily Grossman is stationed in the next room over, notebook in his pocket. He's not writing much, he's just listening to the building settle. A supply runner bolts across the open street. Chekhov has him lined up, easy. The crosshairs drift and settle. Drift again. He could take the shot, add another to his count. But this guy isn't the one. Someone else is moving supplies tonight. He waits. A minute later, two figures break cover. One carrying papers in a wooden folder, the other with a coil of wire. They run low, using the broken walls to zigzag across the open ground. Chekhov tracks them, patient. Grossman scribbles a note about how still a marksman can be when he's not pulling the trigger. Then, Chekhov's finger tightens. He's locked on the NCO's chest like the whole world has slowed down. A gust kicks up dust and grit through the wall gap. He fires into it. The NCO goes down. The wireman panics and scrambles back to cover. Chekhov doesn't shoot him. He just lets the panic do the work. Here's the thing about shooting in rubble at dusk. You need to hide your muzzle flash so nobody remembers exactly where it came from. A loose cloth baffle in front of the barrel, not touching it, that part matters, breaks up the flash without creating pressure that throws you off. You position yourself away from the obvious corner so nobody can draw a straight line back to where you actually are. Getting out means using interior routes and moving fast. You leave at an angle that doesn't cross your own firing lane, because shooting from the same spot twice is basically an invitation. Grossman watches Chekhov slip backward into the shadows. He hears the survivor shouting for the runner, getting no answer back. Later, when this is all done, Grossman will write that discipline can look like mercy, and mercy, on a bad night, can look cruel to the men who were counting on that runner showing up with food. Before Chekhov started working at dusk, couriers on this street were crossing in about 15 seconds. Now that he's established his pattern, wait, then shoot, it takes over a minute. 2 out of every 3 courier runs get called off before they even start. His exit route is 12 steps to the corridor, 8 more to the stairwell, then about a minute to the next position if the path is clear. Chekhov takes another shot a few days later. This time it's a radioman carrying wire, the same wire that carries orders, that turns commands into movement. Chekhov waits until he hears 4 sets of boots on stone. They sent 2 extra men this time to cover him in the twilight. The gust comes late. He fires into it. The coil drops. No second shot. He leaves. He'd rather have people arguing behind him about where he was than have himself arguing about whether to take one more shot. What makes this worse is that the Germans are professionals. They're doing everything right. Teams, cover, speed. But patience beats all of it. Not luck, not firepower. The whole game has changed now. Dusk used to be a danger you hid from. Now it's a weapon you pick up and use. Early December, 1942. A stairwell smells like coal dust and cold soup, with thin, honest light filtering through. A trainee named Mikhail Sokolov has aged faster than the calendar suggests. Not just weeks, but whole winters compressed into months. He's found his spot on a chipped step where his elbow hits the same stone every single time. Across the street, a sergeant raises his hand. Mikhail doesn't rush. He watches that hand lift, watches the men beside the sergeant follow it with their eyes, and then he fires. The radio clicks once and goes completely silent. Nothing happens for a very long time after that. Across town in the same sector that same morning, another team is working. They learned their trade in a ruined building with a chalk wall. They figured out the rhythm, 2 quiet shots, and in return, an entire block's schedule shifts. The noon patrol moves to 3 o'clock. The 4 o'clock supply run gets cancelled. The dusk checkpoint gets pushed to night, and then pushed again, because someone else has owned the night for a week straight now. The key is never firing twice from the same spot in the same time window. If you break that rule, the enemy's counter-sniper math resets, and they start over. But if you stick to it, if you shift your angles and your times constantly, they can't triangulate. Triangulation needs patterns, needs the same angles hitting from the same directions. When those patterns disappear, the enemy starts thinking there are more rifles out there than there actually are. They imagine an entire battalion where there's really just a handful of disciplined people. And an imagined threat stops traffic just as well as a real one. Stopping traffic is what matters. Teams will pass up the easy shots, the satisfying ones, because those easy shots expose a lane they might need later. This is patience measured in hours, not minutes. By December, Zaitsev's confirmed kills are already in the low 200s. That's what patience looks like when it finds the right moment over and over. Nikolai hits more than 200 by early February. The skill outlasts any single location or any single person. Word spreads through the army that snipers from the 62nd Army took out roughly 6,000 Germans. Those numbers aren't body counts, they're stolen time. Minutes stripped from an entire army's schedule by just a few disciplined people with rifles. Then comes the day when almost nothing moves anymore. Winter has worn everyone down. The city itself feels exhausted from all the fighting. But here's what's really happened. People who thought a street was just a line have figured out it's actually a network of nerves. Cut a nerve and the limb stops working. Sever enough of them and the whole body can't get up. One morning, a squad crouches down for an hour, staring at an empty intersection. They're not cowards, they're being smart. Nobody wants to be first to test out the new rules this street is writing. Wait, hide, protect the nerve centers. Stories spread as fast as the actual threat. People whisper about a witch. Legends get into men's heads, make them imagine eyes watching them that aren't there, bullets with names attached. Morale shifts because rumors travel faster than orders ever do. You hear it in the way a man takes 2 breaths before stepping into the open. The enemy is competent and trained and brave, but he's working on a schedule now, and that schedule belongs to someone willing to wait longer than he can possibly manage. Knowledge hits different now than it did at first. Not funny, something quieter and heavier. The city has ground to a halt, block by block. Patience isn't just a skill anymore. It's become an entire system for shutting the enemy down. Late January, 1943. The city centre sits quiet under weak afternoon sun. The snow's starting to melt, that muddy, glistening false spring. The dead are starting to look like they're just sleeping. The kind of guy who laughed off talk of ghosts at the start? He's not laughing anymore. He's standing in an empty lane, looking across it. He makes a call. He's not crossing. His men are lined up with him, all waiting for orders that aren't coming. The wireman is gone. The officer with the real instructions is lying face down behind a wall nobody can reach. Late afternoon, 2nd floor. Zaitsev isn't the one pulling the trigger this time. Could be Mikhail, or one of the shooters trained under that chalk wall. Whoever it is, they're holding their breath through 2 perfect shots. 2 moments where they could take it. But they wait. Hold. The wind shifts just enough to carry the sound away. They take the 3rd chance. Another leader goes down, the kind of guy who gets things moving. The shot's clean. No hesitation. No second round needed. The shooter heads inside, downstairs, through a corridor, out to a back lot where snow still clings to the ground. The routine is what wins streets. When the routine breaks, the battle ends in ways maps can't show. That final shot takes out a man who would have led a crossing tomorrow and the day after. One shot stretches paralysis into all those days ahead. Zaitsev's season pulled roughly 225 men out of the city's fighting force. Ilian carried it into spring, with a little over 200 confirmed by early February. The skills spread beyond any one name. The 62nd Army claimed over 6,000 enemies stopped by snipers. Wartime numbers get stretched, but it's also how the army made sense of what happened, how they told themselves a story. Patience at small scale somehow saved the city at large scale. When the surrender comes through, it's not because of one shot or one man or one tactic. It's those quiet hours when squads were kneeling behind walls, runners weren't showing up, and sergeants weren't standing. Those hours were bought. Zaitsev, Kulikov, Chekhov, all those trainees. They bought them with breath control, long waits, and the discipline to leave when pride wanted them to stay. The street ends the way it started, with silence that means someone chose not to move. The enemy voice that started so confident ends careful. Doesn't confess out loud, but his day says it all. He moves only behind armor, crosses only in bright light, and names what he can't see. He calls them ghosts. The end came. Empty lane at dusk. Boots not crossing. Wind pushing grit along the stones in a low whisper. The men who learned to wait, who mastered stillness, put down their rifles and breathe. Tomorrow's someone else's. Tonight was theirs.